There comes a moment when a woman looks back and realizes she's lost something she thought she'd never miss. Not attention, not validation, but the presence of something real. It's not instant. It doesn't hit her when you leave. It hits her when silence replaces the noise, when peace replaces chaos, and when she finally understands that losing you wasn't just losing a person, it was losing her emotional mirror. Today, we're diving deep into how she truly feels when that realization strikes, not from the surface, but from the depth of emotional awakening she can no longer deny. At first, she tells herself she's fine. She convinces her mind that nothing's changed, that the silence is just peace, not loss. But it doesn't take long before the quiet becomes unbearable. The absence begins to scream louder than your presence ever did. The laughter that used to fill the gaps between her thoughts is gone, and what's left behind is a heaviness she can't name. She scrolls through her phone at night, pretending she's not waiting for a message that will never come. She turns up the music to drown out her own mind, but even that doesn't help, because what she's missing isn't noise, it's the comfort of being emotionally seen. There's a strange kind of emptiness that settles in when she realizes she can't run back to the same energy that once grounded her. She might still have people around, conversations to keep her busy, even moments that make her smile, but none of them reach her heart. None of them feel as safe, as genuine, or as familiar. That's when the emotional void becomes real. It's not about missing the person, it's about missing the connection, the sense of being understood without having to explain herself. That emotional gap is what starts to eat at her slowly and silently. Every routine she once took for granted now feels incomplete. Her mornings start without a sense of direction, and her nights end without the emotional closure she was used to. She begins to feel the disconnection between what she shows the world and what she feels inside. On the outside, she looks composed. She laughs, she works, she posts, she pretends. But deep down, something is missing. The part of her that felt seen, valued, and emotionally held is now gone. And no matter how much she distracts herself, she can't escape that hollow feeling sitting quietly in her chest. She starts to understand that emotional emptiness isn't just sadness, it's confusion, it's denial, it's loneliness dressed up as strength. It's that ache that shows up when she least expects it, like when she passes a familiar place or hears a song that used to mean nothing but now carries everything. It's not dramatic, it's subtle. It's a quiet kind of pain that doesn't make her cry. It just drains her. She starts to feel disconnected from herself because the emotions she once freely shared have nowhere to go now. They stay bottled up, unresolved, heavy. This phase is where she begins to confront the truth that losing emotional depth is much harder than losing physical presence. She may try to fill the gap with distractions, new people, or achievements, but nothing feels enough because deep down, she's not searching for excitement, she's searching for peace, the kind she once felt without realizing it was rare. That's when emptiness becomes her teacher. It shows her the difference between temporary company and emotional companionship. The more she suppresses it, the louder it gets. The silence becomes unbearable, not because she's alone, but because she's now forced to sit with her own emotions, emotions she never had to face before. Every moment that she used to share now turns into reflection. Every piece of advice, every small conversation, every shared silence plays back in her mind with new meaning. She starts to realize that what she once dismissed as ordinary was actually extraordinary. And that's when she finally feels the full weight of emotional emptiness. Not in one moment, but in many. It comes in waves, unpredictable and raw. It's the kind of emptiness that doesn't just make her miss you. It makes her miss the version of herself that existed when she felt emotionally secure, grounded, and understood. When the realization begins to sink in, her mind becomes a loop of memories she can't turn off. She replays every conversation, every argument, every silence, trying to understand where it all started to fade. At first, she does it subconsciously, those small flashes of the past that show up while she's doing something simple like making coffee or driving alone. But over time, it becomes deliberate. She starts seeking those memories, even when they hurt, because they're all she has left to feel something familiar. It's not nostalgia anymore, it's self torment disguised as reflection. She begins to analyze every detail that once felt insignificant: the tone of her voice in a conversation, the way she looked away instead of speaking her truth, the moment she chose ego over emotion. She replays scenes in her mind as if she could rewrite them, fix them, undo the things she now realizes mattered. That's the cruel part. When she finally understands the depth of what she once had, it's already gone. She begins to see the past with new eyes, ones that are more mature, more self aware, and painfully honest. The same moments that once made her feel powerful now make her feel regretful. This replaying isn't just about missing, it's about understanding. She starts to notice the subtle patterns: how you were patient when she was distant, how you listened when she was defensive, how you showed up when she didn't even ask. These realizations sting because they reveal the truth she ignored. She thought she was protecting herself, but she was actually building walls that ended up isolating her. And now, as she looks back, she begins to see the quiet efforts she once took for granted. That's when guilt starts to mix with grief. The nights become the hardest. That's when her mind refuses to rest. Every what if, every maybe, every could have becomes louder in the stillness. She finds herself rewriting conversations in her head, saying the words she never said, apologizing in silence, hoping that somehow the universe will listen. It's a kind of emotional exhaustion that doesn't show. She still functions, still smiles, still moves forward, but internally, she's fighting the endless replay of moments she can't undo. It's not just missing the past, it's being haunted by it. She starts to question her choices, not out of weakness, but out of awareness. She realizes how quick she was to assume, to shut down, to believe that distance was power. But now that same distance feels like punishment. She begins to see how she contributed to the silence, how her pride kept her from expressing what she truly felt. This internal replay becomes her form of self-accountability, painful but necessary, because only through revisiting those moments does she begin to grasp the reality of what was lost. The mind has a cruel way of holding on to what the heart refuses to let go of. She tries to stop the thoughts, but they keep coming back, stronger each time. It's not just the big memories that break her, it's the small, ordinary ones that carry the most weight: the casual texts, the inside jokes, the shared looks that said everything without words. She realizes those were the real moments, the ones that built something deeper than she ever admitted. And now they play in her mind like scenes from a life she can't return to. Each replay teaches her something new about herself: how she handled love, how she handled loss, and how unaware she was of the depth of connection until it was gone. It's an emotional mirror that forces her to confront not just what she lost, but who she was when she had it. And as she continues to relive those moments in silence, she begins to understand that the pain she feels isn't just from losing someone, it's from realizing that she finally sees the truth, but far too late to change it. There comes a point when the replaying stops being about memories and starts being about accountability. She begins to confront the uncomfortable truth. It wasn't always circumstance that pushed things apart. Sometimes it was her pride. In the beginning, she clings to her ego like armor. She tells herself she had every reason to walk away, every justification to stay silent, every right to be distant. But as the noise of anger fades, what remains is the quiet sting of regret. That's when the internal battle begins, between the version of her that wants to appear unbothered and the version of her that knows she made mistakes she can't take back. Her ego becomes her greatest enemy. It whispers lies to protect her, convincing her that she doesn't care, that she's above missing anyone, that she's better off. But late at night, when there's no one to impress and no facade to hold up, regret speaks louder. It's that gnawing feeling in her chest that reminds her of the words she left unsaid, the softness she withheld, the moments she could have chosen vulnerability, but instead chose pride. Ego told her that detachment was strength, but now she sees it for what it truly was: fear disguised as confidence. She begins to realize how often she used silence as power, how many times she held back affection to prove she didn't need anyone, how she interpreted care as control and patience as weakness. She remembers the times she could have spoken her truth, but let her emotions hide behind sarcasm or distance. Those small moments now feel massive, each one a missed opportunity to connect. And as regret builds, it doesn't come with drama or tears, it comes with stillness. A heavy silence that sits inside her, reminding her that being right wasn't worth being alone. In this phase, she starts seeing herself differently. She begins to understand how much energy she spent trying to protect her image of strength instead of nurturing something genuine. Her ego once made her feel powerful, but now it only isolates her. It's humbling when she realizes that real strength was never about control. It was about emotional honesty. She starts recognizing that vulnerability isn't weakness, it's courage. But this awareness comes too late, and that's what makes regret cut deeper. It's not the loss that hurts most, it's knowing she could have prevented it. She plays out scenarios where she would have reacted differently. If she had just picked up the phone, if she had just said what she truly felt, if she had just dropped the attitude long enough to listen. Those ifs begin to haunt her. They become the quiet background noise of her days, the reminders of how easily ego can sabotage love. She realizes that every time she tried to prove she didn't care, she was pushing away the very thing she actually wanted: emotional safety. But when she finally grasps this, she also understands that some lessons can only be learned through loss. Regret changes her. It softens her in ways ego never allowed. She starts to see her own patterns, how she used detachment to avoid pain, how she mistook control for self-respect. She begins to understand that emotional maturity isn't about winning arguments or staying guarded. It's about being self-aware enough to love without fear. This recognition doesn't bring her peace immediately. It brings discomfort because now she can't unsee her part in what went wrong. The pride that once made her feel secure now makes her feel small. So she lives in that tension, torn between wanting to fix things and knowing it's too late. The war between ego and regret doesn't end quickly, it lingers. One moment, she convinces herself she did the right thing. The next, she's overcome with the ache of wishing she hadn't been so stubborn. And in that emotional conflict, she learns the hardest truth of all: that protecting her pride cost her something priceless, the peace that comes from being emotionally honest and real. It doesn't hit her immediately. In the beginning, she tells herself she's fine on her own. She has friends, distractions, a busy life. She convinces herself that nothing has changed. But as time passes, she starts to notice a different kind of emptiness. Not the kind that comes from being alone, but the kind that comes from losing her emotional home. She begins to see that what she lost wasn't just a person, it was the place where she could exhale without pretending, the one connection where she didn't have to perform, explain, or hide behind her walls. That realization doesn't come with a dramatic breakdown. It comes quietly in small, undeniable ways. It's in the middle of the night when she can't sleep and instinctively reaches for her phone, only to remember there's no one to text who will truly understand what she's feeling. It's when she faces something stressful and realizes that the one person who could ground her with just a few words is no longer there. She tries to share her thoughts with others, but it never feels the same. Their responses are polite, generic, surface level, not like the way you used to listen with patience and presence. That's when it dawns on her that emotional safety wasn't something she found everywhere. It was something rare, and she had it without realizing its value. She starts remembering the moments when she felt completely at ease, when silence didn't feel awkward, when vulnerability didn't feel risky, when honesty came naturally. Back then, she didn't even notice how effortless it was. She took it as normal, not realizing how extraordinary it actually was to be that emotionally seen. But now, when every conversation feels filtered and every smile feels practiced, she understands what she truly lost. Emotional safety isn't about comfort, it's about connection. It's about being accepted even when you're not your best. And now that she no longer has that, the world feels a little colder, a little harder to trust. The contrast between then and now becomes her quiet heartbreak. She realizes that people may listen to her stories, but no one truly hears her. They might care, but they don't understand. And no matter how many faces surround her, she feels the isolation that comes from not having someone who gets her unfiltered self. That's when she finally admits it. She misses feeling emotionally safe. Not the conversations, not the memories, but that invisible sense of being held emotionally. The feeling that she could fall apart and still not be judged. She begins to recall how safe she felt being herself, how she could express frustration, fear, or doubt without worrying about being misunderstood. She misses how she could be quiet and it would still be okay. Now she feels the pressure to be fine, to appear strong, to never let her emotions spill out. But that kind of pretending is exhausting. And deep down, she knows why it feels so heavy, because she once had a space where she didn't have to pretend at all. That space wasn't physical, it was emotional. It was the kind of connection that made the world less overwhelming. Over time, she starts to see how rare it is to find someone who creates that kind of safety, someone who allows you to be completely human. It's not something that can be replaced with new company or distractions. It's a bond built on understanding, consistency, and quiet loyalty. Once she realizes this, the regret turns deeper because she now knows she didn't just lose companionship. She lost the one place where she felt completely at home within herself. That understanding humbles her. It softens her defenses, silences her ego, and makes her more aware of the emotional walls she once thought were protection, but were actually barriers. She starts to understand that feeling safe isn't about comfort or convenience, it's about connection and emotional truth. And once that kind of space is gone, she learns that the hardest part isn't living without it. It's realizing she may never find it again in the same way. After the realization settles in, she does what most people do. She distracts herself. She tells herself that keeping busy will help her move on. She fills her schedule with work, social plans, and anything that can keep her mind from drifting back. She goes out more, surrounds herself with noise, laughter, and temporary excitement. To the outside world, she looks fine, maybe even happier. But inside, there's an emptiness that no amount of distraction can erase. She keeps moving, not because she's healed, but because she's running from the silence that forces her to feel. At first, it works. The new faces, the shallow conversations, the attention, they all give her a brief sense of control. She convinces herself that she's over it, that she's finally free from the emotional weight. But then, when the noise fades and the night gets quiet, she feels it again, that emptiness she's been trying to outrun. It creeps back in when she's alone, reminding her that no matter how many new experiences she throws at herself, nothing touches her the same way. She starts to realize that distraction doesn't heal, it only delays the truth. She tries to replace depth with quantity. More friends, more plans, more engagement. But the more she adds to her life, the more she feels disconnected. It's not that the world around her has lost its color. It's that nothing feels real anymore. The conversations feel scripted, the smiles feel temporary, and the people around her feel distant even when they're close. She's physically present but emotionally absent. Every attempt to move on feels like pretending, and deep down, she knows why. Because what she lost wasn't about attention, it was about connection. You can't replace emotional depth with surface level distraction. Sometimes she tries to numb the pain with work, overachievement, or busyness. She throws herself into tasks just to avoid her own thoughts. She tells herself that if she keeps achieving, she won't have to feel. But success feels hollow when there's no one who truly understands what it cost her to get there. She realizes that all the external things she's chasing, validation, attention, recognition, can't fill an emotional void that was once filled by understanding, trust, and peace. The more she tries to substitute emotional depth with productivity, the more drained she becomes. Even moments of joy start to feel bittersweet. She'll find herself laughing only to feel a pang of sadness right after, as if something inside her knows it's not real joy, it's distraction. She begins to see the pattern clearly. Every time she avoids her pain, it waits patiently for her to slow down. Every time she tries to escape it, it returns stronger. It's not the kind of pain that demands attention with tears or breakdowns. It's quiet, steady, and persistent. The kind that makes her realize that healing doesn't come from avoiding, it comes from acknowledging. Eventually, she starts to understand that she's not missing a person. She's missing peace, the kind of peace that comes from being understood without words. She realizes that no one else can fill that space because it wasn't just about love. It was about emotional safety, depth, and connection. You can find company anywhere, but connection is rare. And once you've felt it, everything else feels like noise. That's why nothing seems to satisfy her anymore, no matter how much she tries to move forward. The more she distracts herself, the more obvious the void becomes. It's not that she can't be happy again, it's that she now understands happiness hits differently when it's shared with someone who truly sees you. She learns that no amount of new faces, places, or excitement can replace emotional truth. That's the hardest part. Realizing that peace and connection can't be manufactured. They can only be felt. And once she's experienced that depth, everything else feels temporary. There comes a moment when her denial starts to fade and clarity takes its place. It doesn't happen suddenly. It builds slowly, piece by piece, as she reflects on everything that was once hers, but never truly appreciated. She begins to see that what she had wasn't just affection or companionship, it was love in its most unspoken form. The kind that doesn't need to be loud to be real, the kind that shows itself through consistency, patience, and quiet care. And for the first time, she starts to understand what real love actually felt like, not through the lens of fantasy, but through the wisdom of loss. At first, she used to think love was about excitement, butterflies, constant attention, passion that never fades. But as she looks back now, she realizes real love was in the moments she once overlooked. It was in the way you listened without judgment, in the way you understood her moods without needing an explanation, in the small gestures, the tone of concern in your voice, the calm in your silence, the respect in your boundaries. None of it looked grand or dramatic, yet all of it meant stability, something she now knows is far more valuable than intensity. She starts to see how she once confused emotional chaos for connection. She mistook arguments for passion and distance for strength. But now she understands that real love was never about who could win or who could stay guarded longer. It was about being emotionally safe enough to be vulnerable. It was about having someone who stayed even when she wasn't easy to love, someone who didn't try to fix her but simply stood beside her while she figured herself out. That was love, not perfect, not poetic, but grounding, the kind that teaches rather than drains. The truth hits hardest when she realizes how rare that kind of love actually is. In a world where most people want attention more than understanding, she had someone who genuinely cared, and she let it slip away. That realization changes her perspective. She stops chasing excitement and starts craving peace. She begins to understand that love isn't about constant highs, it's about emotional depth. It's about being able to be yourself without fear of judgment. It's about the silent comfort of knowing someone is there, not because they have to be, but because they choose to be. As her understanding deepens, she also begins to see her own flaws with more compassion. She realizes that part of why she couldn't recognize real love before was because she wasn't ready to receive it. She was too focused on protecting herself, too used to temporary connections, too conditioned to believe that love should feel like a chase. But real love never chased. It waited. It gave her space, understanding, and loyalty, even when she couldn't fully reciprocate it. And that's what makes it unforgettable. Because now that she's experienced that kind of love, everything else feels surface level. She starts to look at love differently. She no longer craves someone who excites her. She craves someone who grounds her, someone who can hold space for her emotions without making her feel small, someone who understands that love isn't always grand gestures. Sometimes it's quiet reassurance. That's when she realizes what she truly lost. Not attention, not romance, but emotional alignment. A connection that wasn't about need, but about mutual understanding. And once she reaches this level of awareness, there's no going back to the version of herself who thought love was just about intensity. This realization doesn't just bring pain, it brings maturity. It opens her eyes to what she truly values in relationships and what she can no longer accept. She starts to appreciate that real love is calm, consistent, and safe. It's not built on fear or insecurity. It's built on trust and respect. And even though she learns this too late, she carries that awareness with her, an understanding that not every connection deserves her energy, and not every affection deserves her heart. Because now she knows the difference between love that drains and love that heals, and she'll never confuse the two again. In the end, her journey isn't about loss, it's about awakening. She goes through denial, reflection, regret, and realization only to arrive at a deeper understanding of herself. What she once saw as heartbreak becomes a mirror, showing her the parts of her that needed growth, honesty, and vulnerability. She learns that losing someone who brought emotional depth isn't just about missing them. It's about confronting her own patterns and redefining what love truly means. And though the pain lingers, it transforms her. She becomes softer, wiser, and more self aware, not because she lost something valuable, but because she finally understood why it was valuable in the first place.